Imagine someone is about to live the most important day of their professional life. Their first day as strategic director at a Fortune 500 company, with a corner office on the 42nd floor waiting, a six-figure salary that will change everything, and her Harvard MBA diploma hanging proudly on the wall. Imagine that her mother worked triple shifts at a restaurant for 20 years to pay for every semester. That extended family traveled from different states to celebrate her graduation. That their entire neighborhood threw the biggest party they'd ever seen to honor the first Martinez to break into corporate America. Imagine that her new business suits hang in the closet like armor. Her leather briefcase contains presentation materials that took months to perfect, and tomorrow she'll walk into that executive boardroom as living proof that the American dream is real. And then, 2 days before her corporate debut, 3 men in expensive suits corner her in a parking garage and force her to watch as they burn a photocopy of her Harvard diploma, telling her that diversity hires like her don't belong in executive America, while filming every moment of her humiliation to ensure she never recovers from the destruction of everything she's worked for. This happened to Sofia Martinez in Boston. But what could force a Harvard MBA to later stand in her own kitchen, burning her real diploma with trembling hands, while everything her family sacrificed for turns to ash? Linda Martinez had calluses on her hands that told the story of 20 years. 20 years of double shifts at Rosario's restaurant, where she'd scrubbed dishes until her knuckles cracked and waited tables until her feet screamed. 20 years of night classes at the community college, studying accounting between her daughter's bedtime stories and the morning alarm. 20 years of saying no to herself so she could say yes to Sofia's future. The envelope from Harvard Business School had arrived on a Tuesday in March, thick and heavy with possibility. Linda's hands shook as she held it, afraid to hope. When Sofia tore it open and screamed with joy, Linda collapsed into the kitchen chair she'd bought secondhand 15 years ago. The same chair where she'd helped with homework, reviewed college applications, and calculated tuition payments down to the penny. "I made it, Mama," Sofia had whispered through tears. "We made it." Harvard Business School, the most prestigious MBA program in the world, where 95% of graduates receive job offers and the median starting salary reaches $175,000. Only 11% of the student body came from first-generation college families like theirs. Sofia wasn't just joining the ranks of future Fortune 500 CEOs, she was breaking a generational cycle of economic limitation that had defined their family for decades. The graduation ceremony in May had been everything Linda dreamed it would be. She sat in Harvard Business School's historic Baker Library, wearing the navy dress she'd saved for 6 months to buy, watching her daughter cross that stage in cap and gown. Around her, families celebrated with the quiet confidence that came from expecting success. But Linda's tears were different. These weren't tears of expected achievement. They were tears of revolution. "Sofia Elena Martinez," the dean announced, and Linda's heart exploded with pride. Her daughter, her brilliant, determined, unstoppable daughter, had just become the first Martinez to earn a graduate degree. The first to break into corporate America's executive class. The first to transform their family's story from survival to success. The celebration afterward had been the talk of their Boston neighborhood. Linda had rented the community center, hired a mariachi band, and invited everyone who'd watched Sofia grow up. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door brought her famous tres leches cake. Mr. Valdez, who tutored Sofia in high school math, raised his glass to toast, "Our little CEO." Even Father Miguel from St. Catherine's blessed the achievement during Sunday service, calling it proof of God's plan for families who never stop believing. But it was the Morrison Industries job offer that made everything real. Strategic director position, $165,000 starting salary, full benefits, and a corner office on the 42nd floor of Boston's financial district. The company recruited exclusively from top-tier MBA programs, Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, and typically hired only candidates with previous Fortune 500 experience. Sofia's selection was unprecedented for someone straight out of graduate school. "They said I'm exactly what they need," Sofia had explained over dinner at their favorite taco place. Fresh perspective, innovative thinking, and the drive to transform their strategic planning division. Mr. Henderson, the VP who interviewed me, said I reminded him of himself when he started. Hungry, brilliant, and ready to change the game. Linda had never seen her daughter so confident, so ready to step into the world she'd prepared for her entire life. The little girl who used to practice business meetings with her dolls, who read Forbes magazine at 13, who stayed up late researching investment strategies while her friends posted on social media. That little girl had grown into exactly who she was meant to become. The weekend before Sophia's start date, Linda had thrown one more celebration. This time, it was just family. Linda's siblings, cousins, and their children gathered around the kitchen table where so many dreams had been born. Uncle Marcus had been unusually quiet that evening, nursing his beer while everyone else toasted Sophia's achievement. "To our family's first executive," Linda had announced, raising her glass. "To the woman who proved that with enough determination, any dream is possible." Sophia's new business suits hung in her closet like armor, each one carefully selected for the corporate battles ahead. Her briefcase, genuine leather, a graduation gift from her mother's entire month's tips, contained fresh notebooks, expensive pens, and a portfolio of strategic analyses she'd prepared to impress her new colleagues. On her desk sat the framed photo from graduation day, Sophia in her cap and gown, Linda's arm around her shoulders, both women beaming with the joy of dreams finally realized. The Harvard MBA program had transformed Sophia from a bright girl with big dreams into a formidable woman with the credentials, connections, and confidence to succeed at the highest levels of American business. She understood financial modeling, strategic planning, and organizational leadership. She'd networked with classmates who would become tomorrow's business leaders, studied under professors who advised Fortune 500 CEOs, and completed case studies on companies that shaped the global economy. Morrison Industries represented everything they'd worked toward: respect, financial security, and the chance to build something meaningful. In the competitive world of corporate America, where connections and credentials determined access, Sophia had earned her seat at the table through pure merit and unwavering determination. But someone was watching, and they had different plans for Sophia's future. Someone who saw her success not as inspiration, but as threat. Someone who understood that destroying a dream required more than just taking away a job. It required destroying the dreamer's belief that she deserved success at all. The text message arrived at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 2 days before Sophia's first day at Morrison Industries. Unknown number, corporate tone. "Ms. Martinez, this is regarding your position at Morrison. Please meet in parking garage B, level 3, section 12 at 8 p.m. tonight. Urgent matter requiring immediate attention. Corporate Relations Department." Sophia's stomach tightened. Corporate Relations? She'd never heard of that department during her interview process. But companies often had internal divisions that new hires didn't encounter until after starting. Maybe it was standard onboarding paperwork, background verification, or security clearance protocols for strategic positions. The downtown parking garage was nearly empty at 8 o'clock, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows between concrete pillars. Sophia's heels echoed against the pavement as she walked towards section 12, clutching her purse and the portfolio she'd brought just in case they needed to review her credentials. 3 men in expensive charcoal suits waited beside a black sedan. They looked like every corporate executive she'd met during Harvard networking events. Sharp clothing, confident posture, serious expressions. The man in the center, distinguished with graying temples, stepped forward as she approached. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Mr. Castellano from Corporate Relations." His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "Of course," Sophia replied, extending her hand professionally. "Though I have to admit I'm not familiar with your department. Is this about my security clearance?" Mr. Castellano didn't shake her hand. Instead, he gestured toward the 2 men flanking him. "These are my associates, Mr. Davidson and Mr. Chen. We handle sensitive personnel matters for Morrison Industries and our corporate partners." Something in his tone made Sophia step back slightly. The garage suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. "What kind of personnel matters?" "The kind that arise when certain hiring decisions create complications." Mr. Castellano's smile was cold, professional. "You see, Miss Martinez, your appointment has generated significant internal discussion. Questions about process, qualifications, and corporate image. Sophia's Harvard training kicked in. Remain calm, gather information, respond strategically. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. My interviews were thorough, my qualifications speak for themselves, and Mr. Henderson specifically mentioned that I was exactly what the strategic planning division needed." "Mr. Henderson?" Mr. Davidson interjected with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Doesn't make final personnel decisions. That authority rests with people who understand the broader implications of hiring choices." The man named Chen pulled out a tablet and began recording. "For corporate documentation purposes," he explained, his voice devoid of emotion. Sophia's pulse quickened. Nothing about this felt like standard corporate procedure. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting for tomorrow during business hours with HR present. There's no misunderstanding, Mr. Castellano said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. Morrison Industries has certain standards, expectations about who represents the company at executive levels. Your hiring was premature, unauthorized, and frankly, embarrassing to our corporate partners. Embarrassing? Sophia's voice cracked despite her efforts to remain composed. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School. My strategic analysis portfolio exceeded every benchmark in your interview process. Harvard? Mr. Davidson said the word like it tasted bitter. Do you know what that degree really represents, Ms. Martinez? It represents a system that prioritizes diversity quotas over actual qualifications. It represents giving opportunities to people who tick the right demographic boxes instead of earning positions through merit. The accusation hit Sophia like a physical blow. Every achievement, every sleepless night studying, every sacrifice her mother had made, reduced to a checkbox. That's completely untrue. I earned my position through academic excellence and demonstrated capability. Really? Mr. Chen held up his tablet, showing Sophia's LinkedIn profile. Because our corporate partners have done extensive research into your background. Single mother, working class family, first-generation college graduate. Classic diversity higher profile. Mr. Castellano reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. We have documentation here showing that your position was created specifically to meet Morrison's diversity metrics for their upcoming federal contract reviews. The strategic director role didn't exist until HR decided they needed someone with your particular demographic characteristics. You're lying. But even as Sophia said it, doubt crept in. Had Mr. Henderson mentioned anything about diversity initiatives during her interviews? Had there been subtle comments about bringing fresh perspectives to the traditionally homogeneous strategic planning team? Are we? Mr. Davidson stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Then explain why your salary is $15,000 higher than the previous directors. Explain why your office is on the executive floor when similar positions are housed with their departmental teams. Explain why you were fast-tracked through interviews that typically take 3 months. Each question felt like another weight added to Sophia's chest. She'd been so proud of negotiating a competitive salary, so excited about the corner office, so grateful for the efficient hiring process. Had it all been too good to be true? Mr. Chen continued filming as Mr. Castellano opened the folder. This is your Harvard diploma, correct? He held up a perfect photocopy of her MBA certificate. Beautiful piece of paper. Very expensive piece of paper. But ultimately just paper. Before Sophia could react, he pulled out a lighter and set the photocopy on fire. The flames consumed her name, her degree, her achievement, while the camera captured every moment. What are you doing? Sophia lunged forward, but Mr. Davidson blocked her path. Demonstrating reality, Mr. Castellano replied calmly, watching the paper turn to ash. Corporate America has ways of dealing with people who don't belong. Your little MBA means nothing when the real power decides you're out. Mr. Chen handed her his phone. Delete your LinkedIn profile. Now. I will not delete it, or we'll delete it for you. Along with your Harvard Alumni Network access, your professional references, and any other digital footprint that suggests you're qualified for executive-level positions. Sophia's hands shook as she held the phone. 20,000 LinkedIn connections, professional achievements, recommendations from professors and classmates. Her entire professional identity existed in that profile. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Mr. Castellano's smile was almost sympathetic. Because Morrison Industries has a reputation to protect. Because our corporate partners demand certain standards. Because sometimes removing a problem quietly is better for everyone involved. The recording continued as Sophia, tears streaming down her face, began deleting her professional life one post at a time. But as her finger hovered over the final delete button, one question burned through her terror. Was Morrison Industries really behind this corporate nightmare, or was something even more sinister pulling the strings? The next morning, Sophia stood outside Morrison Industries at 8:30 a.m. sharp, wearing her carefully selected navy suit and carrying the leather briefcase that represented 20 years of her mother's sacrifices. The security guard at the front desk looked at her with confusion when she presented her employee identification materials. I'm sorry, miss, but I don't show any Sophia Martinez in our system, he said, scrolling through his computer screen with growing concern. Are you sure you have the right building? Sophia's heart began to race. There must be some mistake. I'm the new strategic director. I start today. Mr. Henderson from the executive team hired me personally. The guard made a phone call, speaking in hushed tones before hanging up with a troubled expression. Ma'am, I've spoken with HR and they have no record of your employment. There's no strategic director position currently filled or vacant in our organizational structure. That's impossible. Sophia pulled out her phone, scrolling to the email confirmation from Morrison Industries. But when she opened her email app, the messages were gone. Every correspondence with Mr. Henderson, every interview confirmation, every salary negotiation, completely erased from her account. Panic rising in her throat, she called the main Morrison Industries line. I need to speak with Mr. Henderson in strategic planning, please. I'm sorry, the receptionist replied politely. But we don't have anyone by that name in our directory. And we don't currently have a strategic planning division. Would you like me to connect you with someone else? Sophia hung up, her hands trembling. How was this possible? She'd met with Henderson twice, toured the offices, received the official job offer. She pulled up Morrison Industries' website on her phone and navigated to their leadership team page. No Mr. Henderson. No strategic planning division listed under their corporate structure. By noon, the digital destruction had spread like wildfire. Her LinkedIn profile, which she'd been forced to delete the night before, had been replaced by a fake account bearing her name and photo but listing fabricated credentials and endorsements that painted her as unqualified and delusional. Anonymous comments flooded the fake profile. Claims Harvard MBA but can't provide verification. Multiple employers report inflated resume. Avoid hiring, unstable and dishonest. Her Harvard Business School alumni email account had been deactivated. When she called the alumni office, they claimed her graduation status was under review pending credential verification. The same credentials that had been verified 3 months ago were suddenly in question. The professional network she'd spent 2 years building began crumbling. Classmates who'd celebrated her Morrison Industries hiring now sent confused messages. Sophia, someone's spreading rumors that you fabricated your job offer. What's going on? Others were more direct. I'm hearing troubling things about your professional conduct. I think it's best we keep our distance until this gets resolved. Linda found her daughter that afternoon, sitting on their kitchen floor surrounded by printed emails and documents, frantically trying to prove her own reality. Mija, what happened? Mrs. Rodriguez said people are asking questions about your new job. Mama, they're saying it never existed. Sophia's voice was hollow, defeated. Morrison Industries claims they never hired me. Harvard says my degree is under review. My LinkedIn profile has been replaced with fake information that makes me look like a fraud. Linda knelt beside her daughter, picking up the scattered papers. But we celebrated. The whole neighborhood came. Everyone saw your acceptance letter, your diploma. The acceptance letter is gone from my email. When I tried to log into Morrison's employee portal with the credentials they gave me, the system says the account never existed. It's like the entire job offer was a hallucination. Within 48 hours, the sabotage campaign had reached every corner of Sophia's professional life. Companies where she'd applied for backup positions suddenly rescinded their interest. We've received information that raises concerns about your qualifications and professional integrity, one hiring manager explained apologetically. We can't move forward with your candidacy. Her mentor from Harvard Business School stopped returning her calls. When she finally reached him through his assistant, his voice was cold and professional. Sophia, I've been informed about serious discrepancies in your professional conduct. Until these matters are resolved, I can't provide any references or professional support. The community response was swift and devastating. At Rosario's restaurant, Linda overheard customers whispering. I heard the Martinez girl lied about getting hired at some big company. Made the whole family look foolish with that celebration. The family that had been held up as an example of the American dream's possibility suddenly became the cautionary tale of overreach and delusion. Uncle Marcus visited that Thursday evening, his expression a careful mix of concern and superiority. Linda, I heard about Sophia's situation. These corporate jobs are complicated. Sometimes they make promises they can't keep, especially to people who don't understand how these companies really operate. She graduated from Harvard, Marcus, Linda replied defensively. She earned this opportunity. Harvard teaches theory, not reality. These corporations have their own systems, their own people they prefer to work with. Maybe it's better this way. Sophia can find something more, appropriate for someone with her background. Sophia listened from the next room, each word cutting deeper than the last. Even her own family was beginning to question whether she'd been living in fantasy. By Friday, she'd received 17 rejection letters from companies she'd never applied to, all referencing concerns raised about your professional integrity and qualifications. Her cell phone buzzed constantly with unknown numbers, each call bringing another piece of bad news, another professional door slamming shut, another connection severed. The systematic destruction was so complete, so professionally executed, that even Sophia began to question her own memory. Had the job offer been real? Had she somehow misunderstood the entire process? How could every trace of her professional achievement disappear so thoroughly? But a sharp investigative journalist noticed something didn't add up about the sudden destruction of a Harvard MBA's career, and she was about to uncover the truth behind Morrison Industries' perfect demolition job. 3 weeks after Sophia's professional destruction, investigative journalist Rebecca Chen sat in her cramped office at the Boston Business Herald, scrolling through yet another story of corporate hiring gone wrong. As the paper's senior business correspondent, she'd covered her share of employment disputes, discrimination cases, and corporate scandals. But something about the Martinez case, buried in a single paragraph of a larger article about MBA job market struggles, didn't sit right. Rebecca had built her career on pattern recognition, and this pattern was all wrong. She pulled up Morrison Industries' corporate website, navigating through their leadership directory with the thoroughness that had earned her 3 journalism awards. No Mr. Henderson in strategic planning. In fact, no strategic planning division listed anywhere in their corporate structure. That was unusual. Most Fortune 500 companies maintain strategic planning teams, especially in competitive markets. Her first call went to Morrison Industries' main reception. "I'm calling to verify the employment status of Sophia Martinez, who was recently hired as strategic director," she said, adopting the professional tone that usually opened corporate doors. "I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone by that name in our directory," came the polite but definitive response. "And we don't currently have a strategic director position in our organizational structure." Rebecca frowned. Companies didn't typically create executive-level positions and then claim they never existed. She called Morrison's HR department directly, claiming to be conducting a reference check for Martinez's new employer. "Ms. Martinez?" "No, we have no record of her employment, interviews, or any application materials," the HR representative confirmed. "I've been with Morrison for 8 years, and we've never had a strategic director role. Our strategic planning functions are handled within our existing executive team." That was strike 2. Rebecca had never encountered a case where a Harvard MBA claimed employment at a company with absolutely no documentation trail. Even failed hires left paperwork. Her next stop was Harvard Business School's Career Services office. As an alumna herself, Rebecca had maintained connections that proved useful for stories like these. "Sophia Martinez, class of 2025, she said to her former career counselor. "I'm investigating some discrepancies around her post-graduation employment. Can you confirm her job placement?" The pause was telling. "Rebecca, that's complicated. Sophia was one of our most successful graduates. Multiple interviews, excellent networking, top-tier company interest. But recently, there have been questions raised about her professional conduct that we're looking into." "What kind of questions?" "Anonymous reports suggesting she fabricated job offers, inflated her qualifications, exhibited unstable behavior during the hiring process. It's very unusual. Sophia was always one of our most grounded ethical students." Strike 3. Harvard Business School didn't question their graduates' ethics without serious cause, but they also didn't typically receive anonymous reports about recent alumni unless someone was actively feeding them information. Rebecca spent the next week diving deeper into Morrison Industries' corporate practices. She requested their annual diversity reports through public records, documents that would show their actual hiring statistics and compliance with federal diversity requirements. What she found contradicted everything about the supposed diversity quota accusations. Morrison Industries employed 12,000 people globally. Their executive team consisted of 11 white men and 1 white woman. Their diversity metrics consistently fell below industry standards, and they'd been cited twice in the past 5 years for inadequate minority hiring practices. The idea that they were desperately seeking diversity hires was laughable. More importantly, Morrison had never employed corporate enforcement agents. When Rebecca called their security director, a 20-year company veteran, he was genuinely confused by her questions. "Corporate enforcers? We've never had anything like that," he said with a laugh. "We barely have adequate IT security." When we need serious enforcement, we work with law firms or federal agencies, not private contractors. The idea of sending people to parking garages to intimidate potential employees is absurd and illegal. Rebecca's investigation expanded to other Harvard MBA graduates who'd experienced similar professional destruction. Through careful networking and off-the-record conversations, she found 3 other cases in the Boston area. Promising graduates whose job offers had mysteriously evaporated, whose professional reputations had been systematically demolished through anonymous campaigns. But here's where the pattern broke down. None of the other victims had been targeted with the elaborate corporate enforcer story. Their destructions were simpler: rescinded offers, negative reference calls, social media harassment. Sophia's case was uniquely theatrical, almost as if someone wanted to create a believable explanation for why her career was being destroyed. Rebecca pulled Morrison Industries' financial records, looking for any payments to security firms, private investigators, or corporate consulting groups that might handle sensitive personnel matters. Nothing. Their expenditures were transparent, typical of a publicly traded company under SEC oversight. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source: building security footage. Rebecca had learned that the parking garage where Sophia's confrontation occurred was owned by a real estate company that maintained comprehensive surveillance. Through a Freedom of Information Act request related to public safety, she obtained footage from that Tuesday evening. 3 men in expensive suits, just as Sophia had described. But Rebecca's journalism background included years of crime reporting, and something about their body language, their positioning, their interaction patterns suggested these weren't professional intimidators. They moved like actors following a script, not experienced enforcers executing a corporate directive. Most telling was the license plate on their sedan, registered to a car rental company that specialized in short-term theatrical and film production rentals. As Rebecca compiled her evidence, one devastating truth became clear. Someone had orchestrated an elaborate performance designed to destroy Sofia Martinez's career while providing a believable explanation that would discourage further investigation. The Morrison Industries story was completely fabricated, but the destruction of Sophia's professional life was terrifyingly real. The question that kept Rebecca awake at night was simple but chilling. If Morrison Industries wasn't behind this corporate nightmare, then who had the resources, motivation, and intimate knowledge of Sophia's life to orchestrate such a sophisticated destruction campaign? The truth was more devastating than any corporate conspiracy, and it was hiding much closer to home than anyone could imagine. Rebecca Chen's breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a parking violation ticket. While reviewing the surveillance footage for the 3rd time, she noticed that the black sedan used by the supposed corporate enforcers had remained in the parking garage for 2 hours after Sophia's confrontation. The building's automated parking system had issued a citation for overstaying the hourly limit. Rebecca obtained the ticket record through public information requests, which led her to the rental company's detailed transaction history. The car had been rented by Marcos Valdez, Linda Martinez's brother. Rebecca spent the next 48 hours conducting the most delicate investigation of her career. Corporate records showed that Marcos Valdez was indeed a corporate executive, but not at Morrison Industries. He was vice president of operations at Meridian Tech, a mid-sized company that competed for the same federal contracts as Morrison. More importantly, Marcos had access to the kind of corporate knowledge that would make the fake enforcement scenario believable. But it was Marcos's personal financial records, obtained through a contact at his bank who owed Rebecca a favor, that revealed the devastating scope of his deception. 3 weeks before Sophia's graduation, Marcos had withdrawn $15,000 in cash. 2 weeks later, another $8,000. The timing corresponded perfectly with the elaborate campaign against his niece. Rebecca's investigation into the corporate enforcers led her to Spotlight Acting Services, a Boston-based company that provided performers for corporate training videos, role-playing scenarios, and business presentations. Their client list included companies that hired actors to portray executives, security personnel, and professional consultants for various corporate events. The owner, reluctant at first, eventually confirmed that a Marcos Valdez had hired 3 of their most professional-looking actors for what he described as a corporate training exercise about employment fraud prevention. The actors had been provided with expensive suits, coaching on corporate intimidation tactics, and a detailed script about diversity hiring practices and corporate enforcement procedures. He was very specific about the scenario, the owner told Rebecca during their off-the-record conversation. He wanted it to look like legitimate corporate security, complete with recording equipment and official-sounding terminology. Said it was for a company training video about how employment scams operate. But the most damning evidence came from Marcus's own digital footprint. Rebecca discovered that he had created multiple fake email accounts using variations of Morrison Industries' domain name. The Mr. Henderson who had interviewed Sophia offered her the position and sent all those convincing corporate communications. All of it had originated from Marcus's home computer. Rebecca found evidence of Marcus's elaborate research into his niece's job search. He had monitored Sophia's LinkedIn activity, tracked her interview schedules, and even contacted Harvard's Career Services office using a fake alumni identity to gather information about her placement prospects. The sophistication of his surveillance revealed a man consumed with watching his niece's success. The psychological profile that emerged was devastating in its clarity. Marcus Valdez had spent 23 years climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Tech, working his way up from junior analyst to vice president through methodical determination and sacrifice. His own son David had dropped out of college twice and was currently working at a retail store, showing no interest in professional advancement or academic achievement. Rebecca interviewed former colleagues at Meridian Tech who painted a picture of a man increasingly obsessed with family legacy and professional validation. Marcus always talked about his family's success, one former coworker revealed. But lately it was always about how his sister's daughter was going to Harvard, getting these amazing opportunities. You could tell it ate at him. Here he was, the successful one with the corporate career, but his nephew was struggling while his niece was heading for the executive track. The investigation revealed that Marcus had attended Sophia's Harvard graduation ceremony, sitting in the back where family wouldn't notice him. Witnesses remembered seeing him at the neighborhood celebration, his expression growing darker as speaker after speaker praised Sophia's achievement and Linda's sacrifice. The praise that was meant to honor the family's success had apparently triggered something devastating in Marcus's psyche. Rebecca's analysis of Marcus's financial situation revealed another layer of resentment. Despite his corporate position, Marcus had significant debt from his son's failed college attempts, his wife's medical expenses, and the cost of maintaining an upper-middle-class lifestyle on a salary that was substantial but not exceptional. Meanwhile, Linda, who worked in restaurants, was raising a daughter destined for corporate success that would eventually surpass Marcus's own achievements. The fake Morrison Industries position had been Marcus's masterpiece of psychological warfare. He had researched the company thoroughly, learning their organizational structure, hiring practices, and corporate culture well enough to create a convincing facade. The job offer was designed to be everything Sophia and Linda had dreamed of: validation of their sacrifice, proof that the American dream was real, and the promise of generational change. But Marcus's plan went beyond simple job offer fraud. The corporate enforcer scenario served multiple psychological purposes. It provided a believable explanation for why Sophia's career was being destroyed. It played on existing stereotypes about diversity hiring that would make people question her qualifications, and it created a level of trauma that would discourage further investigation. Most insidiously, Marcus had designed the fake corporate enforcement to exploit Linda's fears about challenging authority and questioning systems. He knew his sister well enough to predict that she would be intimidated by corporate power, reluctant to pursue legal action against a Fortune 500 company, and inclined to accept that these companies have their own ways of doing things. Rebecca's final piece of evidence came from Marcus's home security system, which recorded him practicing the phone calls he would make as Mr. Henderson. The footage showed a man rehearsing corporate jargon, perfecting an authoritative tone, and preparing for a performance that would destroy his own niece's dreams. But the truth was more devastating than any corporate conspiracy, and it was about to tear apart a family that had already sacrificed everything for success. Rebecca Chen sat across from Linda Martinez in the small kitchen where 20 years of dreams had been born and destroyed. The evidence folder between them contained bank records, rental receipts, surveillance photos, and actor testimonials that painted an undeniable picture of betrayal. "Your brother orchestrated everything," Rebecca said gently. "The job offer, the corporate enforcers, the systematic destruction of Sophia's career, all of it came from Marcus." Linda's hands trembled as she reviewed the documents. Parking garage footage showed Marcus directing the fake corporate enforcers. Bank records revealed the cash withdrawals that paid for the elaborate performance. Email metadata traced every Mr. Henderson communication back to Marcus's home computer. "Why?" Linda whispered, the word breaking like glass. "Why would he destroy his own niece?" That evening, Linda confronted Marcus at his suburban home, Sophia and Rebecca beside her as witnesses. Marcus answered the door in his corporate attire, the successful executive facade still intact. "We need to talk," Linda said, holding up the evidence folder. Marcus's face went ashen when he saw the bank records. His corporate confidence crumbled as Linda spread the photographs across his dining room table. Images of him meeting with the actors, rehearsing phone calls, monitoring Sophia's LinkedIn profile. "You hired actors," Melinda said, her voice steady despite her tears. "You created fake email accounts. You destroyed your own niece's career out of jealousy." Marcus collapsed into his chair, 23 years of corporate composure dissolving. "You don't understand the pressure, Linda. David dropped out of college twice. He's working retail while your daughter was heading for the executive track. Do you know what that does to a father? So you destroyed her dreams? I worked my ass off for 23 years to build something meaningful, and she just walks out of Harvard straight into executive success?" Marcus's voice cracked with decades of suppressed resentment. "I've been climbing the corporate ladder since before she was born. My son can't even finish community college, but your princess gets everything handed to her." Sophia spoke for the first time since entering the house. "Nothing was handed to me, Uncle Marcus. Mama worked 3 jobs. I studied while you were at family dinners complaining about your life." Marcus looked at his niece with eyes full of pain and twisted logic. "You made my family look like failures. Every family gathering became about your achievements, your future, your success. My wife would come home asking why David couldn't be more like you. My neighbors would ask when David was going to Harvard like his cousin." "That's not my fault," Sophia replied. "That was never about you." "Everything is about family legacy," Marcus shot back. "You were going to surpass everything I'd built. 23 years of corporate sacrifice, and my sister's restaurant worker daughter would end up more successful than me. I couldn't let that happen." Linda's voice was barely audible. "So you hired actors to traumatize her. You made her destroy her own diploma. You convinced her she was worthless." Marcus's breakdown was complete now, years of jealousy and inadequacy pouring out. "I thought if I could destroy her confidence, make her believe she didn't belong in corporate America, she'd settle for something more appropriate, something that wouldn't make the rest of us look like we'd wasted our lives." The room fell silent except for Marcus's sobbing. The successful executive, the family's corporate success story, revealed as a man so threatened by his niece's potential that he'd orchestrated her professional destruction. "The irony," Rebecca observed quietly, "is that you succeeded in business but failed as a human being. Sophia earned her success through merit. You destroyed yours through cruelty." Linda stood up, her decision clear. "We're pressing charges for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. And Marcus, you're no longer welcome in our family." 6 months later, Sophia started her real job as strategic director at Hartwell Industries, a position she'd earned through Rebecca's investigative article that exposed the sophisticated sabotage campaign. The story had made Sophia a symbol of resilience against family betrayal and corporate intimidation. Marcus faced federal charges for identity fraud and conspiracy. His corporate career ended in disgrace. His marriage dissolved, and his son David finally found his own path, ironically inspired by his cousin's strength in rebuilding her life after betrayal. Sometimes the greatest enemy of success isn't corporate corruption or systemic bias. It's the family jealousy that comes disguised as love.